Buenos dias, Gunners Collective TV. Back at it, you already know. Like a torta with some bad habits. Bye, up, bye, up. Let's get straight to that intro. Welcome back to the channel. And if you haven't already hit that like and subscribe button, make sure you go ahead and do that. Put your notification bell on all so that way you're directing the direction of the dope content that I stay kicking. And I appreciate the support. I'm very humbled. So Wasco State Prison had a fucking riot, a melee. They got with it. They got down, right? 48 people involved in this riot. 3 people suffering injuries that took them to the hospital, as well as 2 COs injured. But they're going to see all right, cuz, right? On Mama Bear. Look, you ever noticed every time a riot happens in prison, nowadays, the correction officers are always all right? You never see them getting medevaced up out of there. You never see them getting hit fatally. They always say in these articles, 2 COs, 3 COs, 4 COs got whacked, but they're going to be all right. They're always all right. And I'm going to tell you why they're all right. Because people are not targeting them like they're targeting each other. See, that's the problem with this world. Law enforcement, authority figures know that the gangs, the groups, the people are going to continuously target each other, medevac each other about the situation, and they're going to still continue to run and control the yards because they got the gun and they got the keys, man. And that's just what it is. We may think as people in them prison, behind them prison walls, in that prison, on that yard, that we are controlling something, but we are controlling that direct area. They are controlling the perimeter. And that's all that needs to be controlled, right? So another riot at Wasco. Who did it involve? Was it an active riot? Was it active general population gang members? Nope. Hell no. What it was 2 different SNY groups, 2 non-active gangs that got off on each other. Why? One never knows, does one? Definitely politicking within the prison yards, because even these SNY gangs, these non-active gangs, politic, right? It could be a situation that started simply over a drug debt, over disrespect, or over 2 groups being placed on the yard who wasn't quite seeing eye to eye on that particular day. In any case, Wasco State Prison is a reception prison, but there are some times when people get into direct contact with each other and they get off where they're mad at. Now, Wasco Prison is also a yard known to house the Fresno Bulldogs, meaning that they do have yards in that particular prison. In fact, Wasco Prison was the first, when the Bulldogs were segregated from North and South, that was the first prison that they were placed on where they had what is considered their own general population yard. Now, when the Bulldogs function on a yard, they are functioning with whites, blacks, sometimes whites, depending on how the whites fucking get off, but blacks and others. That is who they are on the yard with. That's how they are able to accumulate numbers. That's how they become larger in group. And it's pretty much like a camp for the Bulldogs, man. There's no opposition. Anytime there's any type of direct opposition, is with them, the blacks or the whites, or 9 times out of 10 amongst each other. They're cleaning up the house. Someone got some bad charges. Someone comes in trying to do a little too much, and they politic on them and get them up out the way, right? This is a situation where this was a full-blown riot. So this leads me to believe that it was SNY groups, right? Because nowadays, that's who's really popping shit off. You're not seeing too many melees or riots on general population yards, GP yards. You got to understand, this is 2026 and times have changed within the CDCR. In the California Department of Corrections, it used to be a lot of North and South issues, a lot of Crip and Blood issues, a lot of Southsider and blacks, Northerners and blacks, Northerners and whites, whites and Southsiders. These were the groups that used to go off. Once in a while, you could sprinkle in the paisas. ¿Por qué? The paisas would be involved in a situation if they found themselves in a situation. And of course, man, the brothers, man, they're known to get off with whoever wants to get off with them. The whites, they do their thing as well. Natives, it's very, very few times that you can sit here and say that the natives were involved with riots against, probably other than the whites and the Southsiders, because of some type of business deal gone wrong on that side of the yard, right? I'm going to be doing a video in the next coming days called Who Controls the Day Room? And I want you guys to pay close attention to that video when I drop it, because that one is going to involve some natives and some paisas and some usos. It's going to trip you out. And it tripped me out when I seen it, right? But that is what it is. Wasco State Prison has not notoriously been known for riots. You know, that's probably one of the facilities, one of the prisons in the state of California where they have the least amount of riots. But Wasco is definitely a dangerous and deadly situation. Anytime you go to a reception, it's dangerous. And let me explain to you why. Reception rules are different than mainline. What do I mean by mainline? I don't necessarily mean general population yards. Mainline is the prison that you go to after you leave reception. Now, there's a lot of people that get the word mainline confused with GP. That is not the case. Mainline just means it's a mainline prison that houses you for an extended amount of time, whereas in reception, you're going for a limited amount of time. Now, there are yards on Wasco that people do go for an unlimited amount of time, right? I think that's where, like I said, the Bulldogs are placed. But the majority of that prison, Wasco, is a reception. Now, it used to be a reception for the lower Central Valley. It used to be a reception from Fresno all the way to Kings County, Tulare County, Kern County. That's what Wasco was the reception for. But now they take guys as far as the Inland Empire, San Diego, LA County. All these guys are now going to Wasco and being housed at Wasco. Whereas in my area, we were always housed at Tracy DVI, Modesto, Merced, Sacramento, Stockton. That part of the Central Valley, which is the upper portion of the Central Valley, was housed at DVI. Then you had the Bay Area that was housed, of course, in San Quentin State Prison, which was also had a reception side. That had general population yards. It had integrated yards, and it definitely had, of course, death row and things like that. So there's been receptions everywhere. There's high desert reception. You know, there's different, Chino was a reception for LA in that direct area. But Wasco is pretty much the hub now that houses most, also Kern Valley, but most of the people go to Wasco. So there's a lot of different people from a lot of different places going to one particular area. There's going to be controversy. There's going to be drama. And like I said, 48 people involved in a riot doesn't seem like a lot in a prison that houses thousands, but that is a lot of people to just get off. You know, I've been involved myself in several riots at a younger age within the California Youth Authority, not necessarily in prison. I've never, ever been involved in one riot myself in the California prison yard. Okay. It just never popped off. There never was that tension. That's why I tell people when I do these videos that watch these movies, you know, you believe that riots happen all the time. That's Hollywood. Riots happen maybe once a year. And that's within the whole California system. Okay, you don't have a lot of riots. Now I've been seeing them more frequent, especially on the SNY yards. When they have these little melees on the integrated yards, they are not considered riots. There's not enough people to have a full-blown riot. They are just melees. You know, anytime that you have actives and non-actives in the same area, there's going to be a conflict of interest. And, you know, based upon the reglas, the rules and the situations of the prison politics, actives cannot function comfortably alongside of non-active gang members because just can't do that. They are no longer welcome, and you are not welcome to go be welcome with them, right? So that's where shit pops off. You got to understand the situation we're in nowadays, okay? Where back in the days, it was cut and dry. Like I said, red and blue, Crip and blood, north and south, black and white, brown and white, right? It's not like that necessarily anymore. There's always going to be that old situation, that old enemyism, we'll call it, right? I'm making words up, where your opposition is a different group segment, especially down racial lines in the California prison system. But more so than anything now, what you have is in 2026, active gang members, which are becoming a dying breed within the prison system, versus non-active gang members or non-actives, period. Because there are people that are literally like myself that are non-active people that aren't a part of a non-active gang group, right? There's a difference. Okay, there's a difference. And I remember the wave that we used to think about these non-active gang members. We used to think that, why? Why do that? Why join another gang when you're not welcome to be a part of the big leagues, right? But that was just our ways of thinking. And not everyone thought like that. And nowadays, it seems like everybody is going onto these dangerous SNY yards, and they are affiliating or becoming a part of something, for whether it's for their safety or just to be cool. I don't know, right? But from what I'm hearing, this riot in Wasco did not involve general population inmates. It was two rival gangs, one of them being the 2 Fivers and another group, I'm not too sure of the other group, that had some differences. It is what it is. Wasco prison, like I said, is a hub and a reception for a lot of people. And there's going to be a lot of people with mixed emotions. There's going to be a lot of people. So you got to understand a reception. You got all elements. People that are brand new, that have never been to prison before, that are just getting there, trying to figure out the ropes. Then you got people that are seasoned. They've been in and out of prison. They continuously go back. They're in on a violation. So they're feeling some type of way. And that's a powder keg for explosion. All it takes is one person to disrespect, or one person to burn someone for a fucking cupcake, a Zuzu, a Wham Wham, a Debbie cake. Anything can create an atmosphere for a riot in prison. But they're far and few between, because you got to understand, if you're willing to go that far to stab someone and hit someone, there had to be some reasoning behind it. People don't just get stabbed on the prison yard to get stabbed. There's always a reason for it. Now, whether that reason merits a person getting booked, which I'll tell you right now, I'm not an advocate for violence, so I don't believe a person should be stabbed for any reason other than being a weirdo. If that's the case, ponle, get yours, right? Get them before they do something else bad to someone else. It is what it is. But when this video popped up, and I seen other people did videos on it about the Wasco riot, I was pretty concerned with the fact that people are saying, oh man, this is the new trend. It's going to start being like this more often. I highly doubt that. I highly doubt that, man. This is something that happens in prison. And I could tell it was an SNY yard right off the gate, because GP nowadays, with having so much tension with and conflict with this integration process and with actives and non-actives, it's kind of like a situation where it's quietly unspoken. The North, the South, the whites, the blacks, the brothers that are involved, it's now them versus them. Do you understand? It's no longer where people could afford to have their soldados take out other GP inmates because they are becoming a minority in the California prison system. Let me explain this to you. I was in Tracy, DVI, commonly known as Gladiator School. It's no longer in existence. It's still there, but it ain't there, if you understand what I'm saying. It was one of the most horrible, dirtiest prisons I've ever been to. Water was brown or black. Windows busted out. It was loud. There was 3 tiers. There's people screaming all day. It just was a prison. When you got there, I remember looking around the first time like, fuck, I'm in DVI. I'm in Tracy. I'd heard stories. My tios would tell me, bring back baños all hit up. Tracy prison, the big yard, all this, and how it was in the 70s and the 80s and early 90s. And so I was a little intimidated by the size, the presence of what's going on. I pulled in there, and there was a big sign that said whites and northerners on lockdown for the next 6 months. I was like, oh shit, right? Damn, I'm coming into a lockdown situation. But I was willing to hold my head high and represent my flag, represent where I was from, right? So I remember getting there. And I remember thinking to myself, man, wow, this is it. And getting put on roll call for the Norteños, and us being the majority there. There was probably about 70 or 80 of us in that block. I was on J-Wing at the time. There was about 70 or 80 of us, pretty deep, right? For 3 tiers, maybe even more, a couple hundred. And blacks there was not as many whites. There was no Southerners on the block. They were confined to East Hall, West Hall at that time. They moved people around, right? But they were segregated from us. No bulldogs in sight. I never heard of a bulldog going to Tracy. If he did, he probably would be housed in K-Wing administrative segregation, because there would be nowhere to put him. That's 100% facts, right? And so I'm sure bulldogs did pass through on an overlay or even housed there because they got caught up in a different city. But like I said, they'll be housed in K-Wing, which was at SEG. And it wasn't because they were PC'd up. It's because administration knew that if they went out to the yard or got on a building where people were going to, they'd be racked. It'd be over, wrapped up, right? Racked. Racked the cell, racked the dog, right? Shout out to the bulldogs, but that's just the truth. If there was one northerner down south, it's a wrap. One southerner up north, it's a wrap. That's just how it goes. But anyways, the bulldogs had no real estate in Tracy. But I remember back in the days being in Tracy and the active gang members being the majority. Okay, roll calls, buenos dias, con permiso en la tira, all that good stuff. The brothers doing theirs, the Crips doing theirs, the Bay Area, the cats that work from the Bay doing theirs, the Bloods. So whoop, you'd hear the whites. Excuse me, brothers on the tier. Oh, good, active Wood brothers, right? They'd be doing their thing. And then I went back on a violation several years later, and everything changed up. Now the actives were very at the very minimal doing these roll calls, and you had dropout gang members doing theirs. They became the majority. Whereas back when I first got there, we were able to walk freely to chow. You know, you got to walk in a straight line, and everyone going down these hallways to the chow hall. But we were the ones unhandcuffed, and it changed. It changed where the non-actives were awarded the non-handcuffs, and we were limited to our movements. And basically, I don't want to say regulated, but regulated, right? I'll say it. That's just how it was. So the times are changing, and they started to change even back then in the mid 2000s. So they're really changed now, where non-active gang members in the state of California are probably the majority. There's more SNY yards, more non-active, more conforming, non-functioning, integrated yards than there are main lines. So these active gang members are trying to hold on to these main lines. It's a grip. It's like hanging onto a bar where you're slipping. They're trying to hold on. So it's very rare to see riots happen amongst GP. Even with the end of hostilities, these guys are getting along. They're wanting to maintain on them yards. There's too much money, too much business being conducted. Whereas it'd be pretty frivolous to go on a lockdown situation to skip fucking packages and visiting and what you got going on based upon some disrespect when it could easily be talking out with other group segments. You know what I mean? You got to have a line of communication with other group segments. Every segment in there has a line of communication with other group segments. If whites, even the whites and blacks have a line of communication, there's an open dialogue there. You know, there's no room for disrespect in prison. And the only way to keep it that way is to get an understanding and converse. That's facts and truth from someone who really did that, right? You have to keep an open line of communication with the back and an open line of communication with every building in there. Everyone needs to be aware and abreast of what's going on, especially nowadays when they're bringing non-actives and actives together, man. Everyone needs to be on the same page in that same book. So this riot happened at Wasco. It was basically on a non-active yard, and it was something that happens, and you notice these riots happen, and then they don't happen again. It's not like when you're on the GP, and it was like Black and Southsider on forever and a long time, right? These riots happen. The individuals that started it or are involved, directly involved, usually get weeded out, and they're gone. I know the Southerners and the Northerners had policies where if you fucking created the conflict and it was in not what it was supposed to be, you were probably going to get removed. So most of them guys fucking dicked up and rolled it up. So that way they already knew what they had coming and they didn't want to participate in that. That's just the facts. That's how it really went down. Most of the shit you're going to see on GP nowadays is going to be removals. People cleaning up trash, you know, conflicts that happen within their own. You're rarely going to see other people from a different group segment put hands on another one. It's not going to happen. So the riot at Wasco was definitely between non-active gang members who continue to seem to be more active than everyone else because they continue to get involved in this riffraff bullshit, this prison politic bullshit. I call it make-believe. But what ain't make-believe is the knives. The knives are real. There was 4 knives, recovered after this riot. And that's how you know right there that it wasn't a GP yard. That explains everything to you. Anyone who's ever been in general population will understand. If there is a melee between Southsiders and whites and Northerners and Southsiders, Black, anyone, and there's only 4 knives on the yard, people are going to get whacked when they come out of the hole. The fuck you mean there's only 4 knives? Everybody must be strapped up, especially on the 4 and 3 yards. Now, I can understand a level 1 or level 2 doing some lightweight handwork, right? But North and South and blacks and whites don't do hand jobs, homie. They do these, right? With just imagine that they were there. They weren't there, just like the ones on this yard in Wasco. Anyways, 48 guys involved. 3 had to go to medical. 2 cops had to go to medical. But of course, as always in every riot, the cops are going to be all right. You know, they're going to be just fine. Now, no one knows the condition of the 3 guys that got flighted up out of there. They didn't get medi-flighted. They got took on an ambulance up out of there for medical attention. And that, again, is another symbolism of it not being a general population yard because there's always at least a couple bodies. Just what it is. Anyways, with that being said, just wanted to bring that to your attention, give my little perspective on the Wasco riot that just happened 2 days ago. Shit's getting tricky in the California Department of Corrections. You got to watch where they put you, man, because it goes down everywhere. Thumbs up or thumbs down. Heavy's going to be the head that wears the crown. I'm going to continue to strive, struggle, and strive for what I honestly and truly believe in. That's the betterment of all people. Leave a comment. Let me know. Am I right? Was it non-active? And again, man, I don't got no inside information on this one that's telling me it was non-active. This is just my perspective and the way I'm seeing it. Because when they said they recovered 4 knives, I said, oh, hell no. active gang members with only 4 knives. Bro, I had 4 knives in my cell at all times. Straight up. Bang, bang. This is the gun.